Happy Groundhog Day. This week is the week when rodent lovers all throughout the world celebrate the ability of rodents to predict the weather. Actually, I'm not sure if they do Groundhog Day in other countries. Do they? Is it just a United States thing? I would assume. Probably. Maybe someone out there knows. Maybe other countries are going, what the heck is he talking about Groundhog Day? Yes, in the United States, we celebrate Groundhog's ability to predict weather. So that's this week. But Groundhog Day, of course, the idea of Groundhog Day, what sticks in people's minds comes from Bill Murray's movie, Groundhog Day, in which he repeats the same day again and again and again until he gets it, okay? And that's like such a perfect metaphor for our lives, or actually our eternal spiritual lives too. We repeat the same day again and again and again until we get it, right? And so like this is everybody. We just repeat different stuff, but it ends up being the same solution, which we're going to walk through some Buddhist and Christian concepts today to demonstrate exactly what that is, okay? What's happening to us in Groundhog Day? Repeating again and again and again. We're going to start with the second noble truth of Buddhism. The first noble truth is dukkha. We all suffer. We're all unsatisfied with really the physical world. We're going to go through pain, emotional pain, and we're going to be unsatisfied with physical solutions. Why? Because physical solutions are temporary. You know, whatever it is that you think you're satisfied with for a little bit, you like a sandwich, a couple hours later you want another one, right? And everything happens that way. You know, we Steeler fans last celebrated a Super Bowl championship 14 years ago now, okay? It was fun that day, but now we're waiting again. And this is true for everybody. Whatever it is that you name, physically speaking, it's eventually going to disappoint you or not satisfy you anymore. That's called dukkha. That's the first truth. Well, the second truth is the reason for the suffering can be known. It's something just called clinging. It's really simple. We hold on to things very tightly. Physical things, but also mental things. They're repeating patterns we have. Upanada is the Buddhist word for it. It's clinging patterns that we have. And there's different things we cling to. We cling to pleasure. This is really what drug use and all forms of addiction tend to be about. We cling to physical things that ultimately end up causing us some pain and suffering because we're seeking pleasure in the high, but again, it doesn't last. That's a good example. Our views could be politics, could be religion in general. We cling to things. A lot of it, the Buddha teaches, is because we're conditioned. Yeah, we got taught that. We believe it's true because we were told when we were little this is what's true. And then we cling to it for the rest of our lives sometimes. Okay? And if we continue to cling to it and it isn't the truth, it's going to cause some pain and suffering as a result. We also cling to rituals and our routines. Why? Well, if someone teaches you that you put the toilet paper underneath instead of over the top when you're little, that's what you do until you meet someone who does it the other way around, and now you're going to argue because you think the toilet paper needs to go underneath instead of over the top. Okay, that could be a ritual. You know, are you a morning person and night person, and when do you do dinner, and on and on and on, with different things people can argue about, different routines and rituals. All of them are examples of clinging, and they're just repeating patterns. And we often suffer, specifically, the first noble truth, we suffer because of the second one. We cling to things, and we insist that we know what's good for us and what feels right, what the right view is, what the right religion is, what the right political idea is, on and on and on. This is what you should do, because this is what I did, and that's what daddy and granddaddy and great-granddaddy before me did. Okay? That's the root of all our suffering. So I'm going to hit you with a couple different Christian concepts, starting with Psalm 19:7. The laws of the Lord are perfect. They will restore my soul. Now, that's Psalm 19:7. Love that one. First of all, because it indicates or it teases the idea of Hebb's Law, one of my favorite laws. Hebb's Law is that your brain gets good at whatever you practice. It's neurons that fire together, wire together. You practiced English when you're little, you get good at speaking English. You practice French, you get good at speaking French. You practice Christianity, that's what you believe. You practice Islam, that's what you believe. You practice Buddhism, that's what you believe. And if you practice there's no such thing as a God, then that's what you believe. And the brain just gives back to you that which you're asking for. You repeat it enough, you get good at it. If I started practicing French, I'd get better at it. Then I'd learn, oh, that's what it is, okay? Except for it's just the way the brain works. And that's Hebb's Law, good science, very physical because it's involving the brain, but it's going to matter when it comes to the answer. The laws of the Lord are perfect, restoring your soul, isn't the laws of the Lord are perfect, restoring your physical body, or restoring your job or your relationship or anything physical, okay? It restores your soul. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We have completely forgotten for most of our lives that we're spiritual beings and we get identified with the ego. To restore your soul helps bring back the awareness, the awakening quality, the born-again resurrection quality of who and what you really are, okay? And so the laws of the Lord aren't doing something to you physically, so therefore they couldn't be physical laws. This is why the routines that the Buddha was talking about doesn't work. It's why Jesus himself left the laws that were being pressured upon him to fulfill the law, which we're going to end with. And so physical stuff, you're not going to get a solution with it. You can repeat patterns and rituals and views and seeking pleasure again and again and again, and it will always unsatisfy or dissatisfy you. And you're always going to end up arguing as a result, because there's going to be somebody else who was conditioned differently. Okay? And all of us fall into this. There's no one that somehow avoids this when they're born. Everybody goes through the dukkha things, okay? So the laws of the Lord are perfect. It means it's happening to you just as it needs to, and it will always happen to you that way, but it doesn't mean physical. When people say everything happens for a reason, they usually mean physically, like I got fired from this job so I could get that job. And the universe isn't doing that to you. Nobody worried spiritually is worried about what happens to you physically. It's happening to restore your soul. You go through difficult stuff to restore the spiritual aspect of yourself. And that's what the laws of the Lord mean, not the laws of the president and the laws of Congress and all those physical laws that we put in place, even family laws or societal laws or whatever, laws inside buildings, you know, can you wear shoes or not inside a building, or no shirt, no service, or no shoes, no service, that kind of stuff. Those are laws. They're physical, and they have a point, physically speaking, not necessarily spiritually. So Jesus in Matthew 9:13 refers to a verse, I believe it's Hosea in the Old Testament. Learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Mercy, not sacrifice. Well, the actual definition of sacrifice is to slaughter an animal or a person, or to surrender a possession. That's the literal definition of sacrifice, okay? Well, Jesus is specifically saying, I don't desire physical things from you. You don't need to do physical things. There's no ritual routine that's going to somehow restore your soul. Just like the Buddha is saying, there isn't any type of physical ritual that's going to break you, get you there. I specifically learned this, as most people know, and if you know, Tom Brady has retired this week, hopefully for good. But I've learned how to appreciate the man, because I, as a ritual really, and a perspective and a view, tried to take pleasure in him losing, but that was my personal Groundhog Day, among many others, for a long period of time. Every single year since our first son was born, Tom Brady has been winning football games, and I keep rooting against them. How much suffering did I incur as a result of that view? And it was a faulty view, too. It's silly. Why am I rooting against a guy who plays football well? Plenty of Americans do that with the Super Bowl coming up. People are convinced that they're right for believing this or that. Fine, if that's what you want to do. I suffered in that process. And with Tom Brady retiring, that endless loop of him winning games and my team's losing games may be over finally. And how silly was it for me to wait for him to retire to do that? Thankfully, the laws of the Lord are perfect. That was always being shoved in my face until I learned how to do something, you know, spiritual. Instead of always looking at needing a guy to lose in order for me to feel good. How weird is that? And I faced him again and again, unbeknownst to him, like a mirror all the time. Now that's a very low-level version of difficult stuff we go through, of course. But like just getting older and watching people die, loved ones suffer, disease and struggles in general, you learn how to adapt as a therapist, or learn how to deal with it after a while, because you start to notice something. Some people respond to adversity spiritually, and others try to continue to deal with it physically. And which group of those two groups tend to do better? The ones who actually do the laws of the Lord, the ones who respond to physical things spiritually. It's where we have, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Now, if you're in a position where you have a choice to make about what you should you do something spiritual or physical? He's specifically saying spiritual. Far better to let something go and to not punish physically someone than to, you know, sacrifice them, as he's saying, or yourself. You're not doing anything special by giving something physically to someone, but that's physical. But you're doing something special when you offer mercy to someone. Major difference. One's spiritual, one's physical. Okay? So, perfect laws are included in Galatians 5:22 and 23. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness and self-control. And there's a lot more than that. They're just called virtues. That's the fruit of the Spirit. And this is the answer. Paul says, against such things there is no law. Now at the beginning here, we were talking about the laws of the Lord. When that often gets perceived to be physical things, rules you have to follow in order to please God. That's physical stuff. That doesn't exist. It defies the noble truths, doesn't work. You find yourself in, no matter the situation, trying to control things you cannot control. But against such thing there is no law is because you can practice love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, and all those things in every situation possible. You can watch a Super Bowl and have your team win or lose and practice both of those things. I love to point out something as simple, a virtue like patience. First definition of love in Corinthians. Patience can be practiced anywhere. Joy can be practiced anywhere. Right? Everywhere you go, if you're tapped into your spiritual self, you can feel that thing called joy. It can be difficult, but it's the answer. Here's Jesus going to a cross to demonstrate exactly this. It didn't go well physically. He even said, take this cup from me. He didn't want to do it, but that was the physical world experience that he was having he didn't want. And all of us go through stuff we don't want. But what he knew he needed to do, being sinless, he knew what he needed to do. That's what that means. He knew he needed to apply himself spiritually. I thirst, he says, of course. He needed more spirit. And what did he get as a result? More light, more understanding, more awareness, more strength to get through what he needed to do spiritually. And that man was loving and forgiving and kind and gentle and all those things during the most difficult phase of his life. Well, that's why there's no law. When you suffer, when you go through difficult things, if it's something as simple as watching a football team beat your football team, or the death of a loved one, or even your own mortality, you're not going to respond to it effectively physically. You're not going to be able to control it. And by the way, when it comes to death, we all are going to lose that one. But man, if you respond spiritually, if you respond with mercy and not sacrifice, if you learn how to let go of your repeating patterns, you end up with the laws of the Lord, and they're literally the fruits of the Spirit. Against such things, there is no law.